Well, it's Christmas Eve, and welcome to my greenhouse. This is Ed, and I hope to be doing a series of videos in my greenhouse this coming year to give you an idea of what happens season by season, the type of challenges I'm facing. Just to set the stage, we are midway between Los Angeles and San Francisco, about 8 miles inland in California, so we have a definite coastal environment. In the winter, I'll see frosts occasionally a light dusting of snow, so the temperatures can go down as low as the high 20s, but typically stay in the 40s for a low in the wintertime. And occasionally we get a sunny afternoon. It was raining this morning, but now the sun is coming out. And so I'll get temperatures in my greenhouse in the mid 70s in the wintertime. So what I'm facing now in the December-January time frame is keeping the orchids dry on days when I know the nighttime temperature in the greenhouse is going to be in the low 40s. So that means temperature monitoring and moisture monitoring are critical. And I've also stopped fertilizing about the middle of November to harden off the orchids so that there's not a lot of succulent green new growth. And I'm going to just go through a number of orchids. I do grow a very wide range of orchids in my greenhouse, some of which I didn't think I was able to grow, but nonetheless have done well. So I'll point those out to you, and we'll just take a little tour. I've been asked by some of the newer members of Five Cities Orchid Society, our local orchid society, to not get really heavily involved in nomenclature and things that only advanced hobbyists are concerned with. So we'll try to keep this a little bit on the light side. I'll go back and try to splice in some of the names of the orchids as we pass by them, and that'll give you a good reference of what we're looking at. But first, we want to take a look at a Cattleya. And this type of orchid, Fred Clark of Sunset Valley Orchids in Vista, California, specializes in these. Very attractive flower on pendulous spikes. Some are upright. But the nice thing is, if you're in a cold climate and you tend to leave your primary residence and go to the warmer winter cities or states rather, like Florida, maybe Southern California, or even the Caribbean, you can take these orchids and don't be concerned the leaves are yellowing. As the days shorten and you stop watering them, they'll lose all their leaves, and the pseudobulbs can remain dormant up until probably the end of April, early May. So if you go away and leave your primary residence in the winter, Cattleya and the related species complex are great orchids to have because they only require care, watering, fertilizing from about May through October. And after that, they go dormant. Although you do get some pretty nice blooms on some of these in the December-January time frame as all of the leaves fall off. So let's take a look at one orchid I really didn't believe I could grow here, but this is Picarra's Delight of Vanda. And there is an orchid that grows in the Himalayas, Vanda cerulean, that's very frost tolerant. And so if you get some hybrids that have Vanda cerulean in the background, you'll get these gorgeous blooms 2, sometimes 3 times a year. This one has another flower spike emerging, and so future follow-up will show that bloom spike. And then here's another one, again with Vanda cerulean in the background. This is the third flower spike in about the last 5 months that's developing. And again, future videos will show you what that looks like. Related to the Vandas is Renathera. And again, you can see the type of growth. This will have really pretty orangey red flowers. And the really prized specimen here is Renathera Red Dragon. And this will have sprays of just scarlet red flowers. And we've got one flower spike coming up here, and then a little larger growth up top, another flower spike developing. So you'll see those if plants bear fruit in future videos. Main orchid blooming this time of year for me is Cattleya perseviliana, one of my favorites. When I started growing this, I mounted it, put sphagnum moss under it, and watered it just about every day in the wintertime, developed rot, and lost my first Vanda persivaliana. So now what I do is this is mounted on a piece of oak. And as you can see, it was been mounted maybe 8 years ago. The oak mount is completely covered by roots. It does get misted and watered in the spring, summer, and early autumn every day. So I don't travel at all in retirement. And if you do want to have mounted orchids, you're going to need to figure out some way to mist them regularly, particularly on hot summer days. So that's mounted Cattleya persivaliana. Here's persivaliana in a net pot. And you can see quite vigorous root growing. And persivaliana is recommended as one of the easier to grow Cattleya orchids. Just fantastic blooms for the holidays. This is the standard color form. And in a minute, I'll show you what the semi-alba looks like. I have two forms. First one is jewel. So Cattleya persivaliana jewel, which still retains the purple color in the throat. But the sepals, which are the thinner petals on the outside, are lacking the purple pigment. And then the other semi-alba has the purple color completely dropping out of it. And this one tends to bloom earlier than my other Cattleya persivaliana. So this is ending its bloom period, but I think it had 6 blooms, about 23 flowers. But you can see there's virtually no purple, maybe a slight purple shading in the lip. But again, a very attractive orchid that blooms in the holidays, or before the holidays. And right next to it, we have Cattleya Betty Ford York. This is one of the larger Cattleyas. Shouldn't be able to grow it in my greenhouse because I do get temperatures down as low as the low 40s on winter mornings. And the sun's coming out, so you get a little better appreciation for the flower colors. But I do have an electric heater below this center bench, and I did decide to use poured 2-inch thick concrete tops for my central bench as well as the side benches. And what that does is it sucks up heat during the heat of the day, releases at night, and tends to moderate temperature fluctuations. And so as much as airflow may be restricted as opposed to wire benches, I'm more concerned with maintaining warmth on cold winter mornings. And the concrete does a good job of keeping temperatures a few degrees warmer than they otherwise would be. And I want to show you, I mentioned moisture management is a key issue. I noticed this yesterday morning, but this Cattleya relative is in a clay pot, should have been repotted a while ago, and the root ball is not drying out thoroughly, and it's getting chilled and staying damp. And so I've noticed in the center of the plant, I've got some bacterial problems with a rotted pseudobulb. There were some leaves that showed they died right where they attach to the pseudobulb. And so I've got to pull this plant apart, figure out what's going on. But this is what happens if you don't have proper moisture management in the wintertime and keeping your orchids dry when it cools off. Because the saying in our Orchid Society goes, cold and wet equals death. And while we're talking about moisture management, I have a number of Dendrobiums that require a dry winter rest. And so what I've done is I've got a collection of them on the upper suspended rail as hanging plants. And these get misted maybe once a week to duplicate what a cloud forest would experience in Central South America and parts of Mexico. So where we talk about a dry winter rest, these plants still get moisture from condensing fogs occasionally in the morning. So you don't need to keep them absolutely dry. And I found that they do better if they get misted maybe once a week to prevent the pseudobulbs from completely drying out and wrinkling pretty badly. And so what I do is, starting around Thanksgiving, I stop watering, and watering will resume sometime in maybe mid to late February. Valentine's Day is one of the days when it's mentioned for dry winter rest, from Thanksgiving through Valentine's Day. Cattleya skinneri in the back, you can see the flower sheaths, and you may be able to see the outlines of some flower spikes developing. Future follow-up videos will show you what those look like. And then we're just going to walk down the length of the greenhouse. This is primarily a east and south exposure, so this is the brighter part of my greenhouse. Here's a Vanda that our Orchid Society bought as a plug from a Hawaiian grower about 6 years ago, and I'm hoping this year to get our first flowers on it. So again, future videos, if I do get flowers, you'll see those. Laelia anceps, a little bit of a Dr. Seuss plant. The flower spikes can be 2 to 4 feet long, but really, really nice flowers and a number of variations in the flower color. This is one type, and this has a dark throat, so most likely a Guerrera variety. Here's a Laelia anceps hybrid, and its claim to fame is instead of having the typical 3 or 4 flowers per spike, this will have 5 to 7 flowers on the spike. Here's, if you can see in the back, there's a Laelia anceps with 4-foot long flower spikes. And one of the things that's nice, if you find a species you really like, but it's got some shortcomings, or you want to extend the bloom season, if you take Cattleya persivaliana, in this case the standard color form, I'm showing the semi-alba, and you cross it with Laelia anceps, what you get is Laelia Cattleya caligula. And this is a plant of Caligula. And as you can see, the flower spikes are getting about a month, maybe 2 months away from blooming, are about 1 foot tall. And I'll splice in a photo of what the flowers look like. But after my persivaliana are done blooming, my anceps are done blooming, this will come into full bloom March, early April. And I get to enjoy the same type of persivaliana flower on a much shorter plant, and it extends my, my bloom season for Laelia anceps and Cattleya persivaliana type flowers. We'll just take a little walk down to the end of the greenhouse, and this is where I keep some of my miniatures. As I've run out of space, I'm now appreciating miniatures more, but these are tolumias. Tolumias grow in the Caribbean area. They tend to be on the end of bushes on the slender stems, so it's sometimes called twig orchids. And what I found a few years ago, they were growing really well, had a couple of hot summer days, and they just got way too hot, way too sunny. So now, if you can see, I'm growing them underneath a ficus tree that I have growing in the greenhouse with shade cloth above. There is a Schaefer fan above, which keeps this area of constant air movement. I've got it turned off now for the video. But these, when watered, love to dry out quickly, so the roots are exposed to the air. If you grow them in pots on a windowsill, you need to use very, very small pots so the roots dry out. But a great looking plant. This one's a little greener than normal, so it might need a little more sun exposure. But great little flower spikes. This one is called Tougher Fish, and just great little plants. Before I had my problem with sun exposure, I think it was this Tolumia had something like 7 flower spikes and just a huge number of flowers. This year, just 2 spikes, but it's on the road to recovery. So moving now to the north and northwest part of the greenhouse, this is where I keep my stanhopas, sometimes pronounced stanhopias, and we'll do a video on stanhopias a little later. I've been collecting shots of what the flowers look like. Quite a unique orchid, and if you've got the room and you're in a shadier location, stanhopas are a great orchid to consider. Now on the north side, pretty low light conditions where I grow all of my bulbophyllums. And again, come springtime, we hope to see some bulbophyllums blooming. This is buckleberry. Hasn't bloomed yet. I've had it for about 6 years, and I'm hoping this year to get some blooms. So more Laelia anceps. This is a nice lavender shade. And again, you can see the beauty of the flowers, but the fact that they're on these fairly long flower spikes makes it a little bit difficult to display the flowers if you're in a confined space. And what I'm talking about, these are 4-foot long flower spikes, and then the flowers right at the end, but just a gorgeous looking flower. I don't know if you can see it with the sun just went in behind a cloud. There we go. So what I'm battling, again, as I said, is colder temperatures on the coldest mornings. And I'm using an electric heater. We'll just look underneath the bench. And there's my little radiator type heater. It's directly under this concrete bench. And so this heats up, and I've placed all my temperature sensitive orchids on the top of the bench. This one is Darwin's orchid, Angrichium sesquipetale, and we got some nice flower spikes developing. So in a future video, if it stays warm enough, we'll see two really spectacular flowers in the March-April time frame. And let's just take a look at a Miltonopsis. If you're familiar with the pansy orchids, the pansy orchids are the Miltonopsis. This is a Miltonia orchid, and Miltonias have much better temperature tolerance. So when it gets warm in here, a Miltonopsis pansy orchid would just wither and die. And I've tried them a few times, but the Miltonias and some of the hybrids are pretty phenomenal. Do really, really well for me. And this has been blooming for about 7 months now. So if you can't grow the pansy orchids because you're too warm, try a Miltonia. And then this is a hybrid of Cattleya macchii. And I bought a flask of these from Sunset Valley Orchids. All sorts of different color combinations. This has the light lavender lip with spotting. And one of its brethren here just opened up yesterday, and you can see a much darker full color lip. Some of the variants have had white lips, and I have done a video. If you check the 5 Cities Orchid Society YouTube channel, you should see a video on macchii where I talk about hybrids and the different color forms that have been blooming. Let's just move over here. If you like Paphiopedilum slipper orchids, I have found that the Maudai type, which have the striped dorsals, and there are some that have coloration, are really easy to grow and just spectacular flowers. And one other point I should make on the Vandas, they do tend to go dormant when it gets a little bit cooler in here. And so what I do is I watch for the ends of the root tips. And if you can see the root tip is alive and green or reddish tint to it, that means that the orchid roots are continuing to grow. So it's important to keep it a little moister than totally dry to keep those root tips growing and the orchid growing. And then the last orchid that I breezed by that I just wanted to show you is Brassia. And a little bit difficult to photograph, but on the video it comes through a little bit. These are just huge flowers, called a spider orchid. And I should mention that I got this about 10 years ago at Trader Joe's for the overwhelming cost of about $9. And it continues to send up flower spikes throughout the year. Really unusual looking orchid, but just great flowers. So I'm going to end here by just promising to do a few more videos throughout the year so you get an idea of the types of things that I'm doing in my greenhouse. If you don't have a greenhouse, maybe you can enjoy what I'm doing. If you're planning on building a greenhouse, I highly recommend it, particularly if you're in your retirement phase of life and can spend more time with your orchids. So thanks for watching, and we'll be back in another few weeks and show you the progress as I deal with winter conditions, keeping my orchids dry in the evenings, and we'll resume fertilizing probably in the March time frame. Okay, that's for now. Thanks for watching.